The email arrived at 2:17 a.m. A single grainy photo attached, sent from an anonymous account. It was my wife, Amelia, her head thrown back in laughter, her lips pressed against a man's neck. I didn't recognize him at first, just another suit. But then my eyes focused on the cheap tie, the one I'd mocked in a team meeting last week. It was Leo Reyes, my ambitious junior analyst, the kid I was mentoring. My stomach turned to ice. At Sterling and Thorne Holdings, I controlled billions. In my own home, I was a fool. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a hostile takeover of my life. And I, Julian Vance, always win a hostile takeover. He wouldn't just be fired. He would be broken. I didn't sleep. I spent the hours before dawn restructuring my life the way I restructure a failing company, with ruthless precision. At 9:05 a.m., I buzzed my secretary. "Get me Leo Reyes, now." He entered my office with the unearned confidence of a man who thinks he's getting ahead. He even wore a better tie. Maybe Amelia bought it for him. The thought was a shard of glass in my gut. "Mr. Vance," he began, "you wanted to see me?" I let the silence stretch, watching him shift his weight. "Leo," I said, my voice level, "I've had my eye on you. You're ambitious. You take what you want." A flicker of pride in his eyes. He thought it was a compliment. "My executive assistant is being reassigned," I continued. "The position is now yours." His smile faltered. "Your assistant, sir, but I'm in analytics." "You co-er," I corrected, leaning back in my chair. "Now you'll handle my calendar, book my travel, fetch my coffee. You'll be learning how power really works, from the ground up. Congratulations on the promotion." Leo left my office, his face ashen, the cheap swagger gone. The victory felt like ash in my mouth. I had him. But what did I have left? My gaze drifted past the Manhattan skyline, and I saw a ghost from 20 years ago. I met Amelia not in a boardroom, but in a dusty art gallery in Soho she was trying to save. I was a hungry associate at a no-name firm. She was an art history graduate with more passion than capital. We weren't a merger. We were a startup, fueled by cheap wine and a shared, ferocious ambition. She saw the man I was trying to become, and I saw a woman who wasn't afraid of a fight. While I conquered Wall Street, she was my partner, my consigliere, the one person who could call out my bullshit. Sterling and Thorne wasn't built in a day. It was built on a foundation of missed dinners, canceled vacations, and her voice on the phone saying, "It's okay, Julian. I understand. Close the deal." I thought I was building an empire for us. I was so focused on the fortress walls, I didn't notice I'd made her a beautiful prisoner inside them. The art gallery closed. Her friends stopped calling. She became Mrs. Vance, an elegant accessory to my success, displayed at galas and charity events. I'd given her everything money could buy, and taken away everything she was. The signs were there, flashing like neon in the dark, the forced smiles, the late-night book club meetings, the sudden interest in a new gym. I saw them all, but I processed them as data points of a life well managed, not a marriage in crisis. A successful man has a wife with hobbies, I'd told myself. It showed stability. And then came Leo. Of course, it was Leo. He isn't just some random employee. He's me, 25 years ago. The same hunger in his eyes, the same cheap suit, the same willingness to cut corners to get to the top. I saw it the day I hired him. I thought I could mold it, control it. Amelia didn't fall for another man. She fell for a ghost, a low-rent echo of the man she first met. She wasn't trying to replace me. She was trying to get me back, in the only way she had left. She was trying to feel seen again. I stared out my window at the canyons of glass and steel the city I owned. The realization didn't soften me. It hardened me into something cold and sharp. This wasn't just about her betrayal anymore. It was about his imitation. He was a cheap knockoff, a forgery. And I was about to remind everyone, especially Amelia, of the value of the original. The game wasn't just about breaking him. It was about proving he could never, ever be me. The education of Leo Reyes began on Monday. He stood before my desk, ramrod straight, the ghost of his former ambition haunting his eyes. "Your first task," I said, not looking up from a prospectus. "Coffee. Black. From the cart on 53rd and Park, not the one on 52nd. The vendor's name is Sal. Tell him it's for me. He'll know the blend." He hesitated. "Sir, the analyst's morning brief." "Your briefs now consist of my breakfast orders." I cut in, my voice dangerously soft. "Go." An hour later he placed the coffee on my desk. I took a sip and set it down. "Wrong cart, Leo. This is from the corner. It's bitter." I gestured to the bin. "Dispose of it and try again." He didn't argue. He just took the cup, his jaw tight, and left. The second cup was correct. I didn't acknowledge it. The humiliations were constant. A steady, corrosive drip. He was forced to cancel my lunch reservations when I changed my mind at the last second. He spent an afternoon on hold with an airline, rebooking a flight to London for the 5th time. I had him type my memos, fetch my dry cleaning, and stand silently in the corner of board meetings to absorb the atmosphere. I was stripping him down layer by layer, peeling back the cheap suit and ambition to reveal the scared, grasping boy underneath. The real lesson, however, came on Wednesday. "Leo," I called out. He scurried in, notepad ready. "Get my wife on the phone." He froze, his pen hovering over the paper. "Mrs. Vance?" he stammered, the name tasting like poison in his mouth. "Is there another Mrs. Vance I should know about?" I asked, leaning back. "Dial. And put it on speaker. I want you to take notes on our schedule." He looked like a man being asked to sign his own death warrant. His fingers, clumsy and shaking, fumbled with the desk phone. After 2 rings, her voice filled the silent office, cool, melodic, and suddenly so foreign. "Julian." "Amelia, darling," I said, my tone dripping with manufactured warmth. I watched Leo's face, a mask of pale agony. "Just confirming our anniversary dinner on Friday, per se, 8 o'clock. There was a pause on her end. "Of course, I hadn't forgotten." "Good," I continued, my eyes locked on Leo. "I want it to be perfect, a celebration of our history, of everything we've built." Each word was a precision strike, aimed at both of them. "I'll have my new assistant send a car for you at 7:30. He's incredibly attentive. Takes care of every little detail for me." Leo flinched as if I'd physically struck him. On the other end of the line, Amelia's silence was an answer in itself. She understood the game was afoot, and she was a player, whether she liked it or not. "I'll be ready," she finally said, her voice strained. "Wonderful," I purred. "I'll see you then." I disconnected the call, leaving the silence to crush him. He just stood there, notepad in hand, a living monument to his own catastrophic miscalculation. "You can go, Leo," I said dismissively. "That's all for now." He practically fled my office. I watched him go, a cold satisfaction settling in my chest. He wasn't just my assistant, he was my messenger, my tool. I had inserted myself back into the very heart of their sordid little affair, not as the victim, but as the architect of its agonizing demise. He thought he was taking my future. I was about to make him personally hand-deliver it back to me, piece by painful piece. That evening, the silence in our penthouse was a weapon. Amelia sat across from me in the living room, a glass of wine untouched on the table between us. She wasn't looking at a magazine or a tablet. She was looking straight through me. I waited. A cornered animal either panics or becomes dangerously still. Amelia was still. Finally, she spoke, her voice devoid of emotion. "Leo Reyes is your new assistant." It wasn't a question, it was a statement of fact, an opening move in a chess game I had set. He showed initiative. I replied, turning a page of my book, not giving her the satisfaction of my full attention. I'm giving him a chance to see how the business is run from the top, a unique mentorship. A small, mirthless smile touched her lips. "A mentorship. Is that what you're calling it, Julian?" She leaned forward slightly, her eyes like chips of ice. "You've always enjoyed breaking your toys." "I don't play with toys, Amelia. I build empires, and I eliminate liabilities." I closed the book, the sound echoing in the quiet room. Leo is an investment. I'm simply assessing his true value. And his loyalty. Her smile vanished. She knew. She knew the double meaning behind every word. She understood this wasn't just punishment. It was a performance. And she was the primary audience. She stood up, smoothing her dress. "Just be careful," she said, her voice a low warning. "Sometimes, when you try to break something, you only show everyone how fragile you are." She left the room, leaving her wine, and me, in the suffocating silence. Her composure was unexpected. It was a complication I hadn't priced into my strategy. The next morning, I gave Leo his new assignment. He stood before my desk, looking thinner than he had a week ago, the cheap suit hanging off him. "Friday is my anniversary," I stated, pulling a velvet box from my drawer. "This is a gift for my wife, a token of my affection." I slid it across the desk. It stopped just before his fingertips. "You will have it delivered to my home this afternoon. You will give it to Mrs. Vance personally. Tell her you hope she likes it. Tell her. I can't wait to celebrate with her." He stared at the box as if it were a bomb. Taking it was an admission. Refusing was impossible. His hand trembled as he reached out and took it. He was no longer just a messenger. He was now the delivery system for the shrapnel of his own affair. As he walked out clutching the small box, I realized Amelia was right. This was a game. But she'd underestimated my tolerance for risk. I wasn't fragile. I was the house. And the house always wins. I didn't go home. I stayed in my office, high above the city, watching the afternoon light bleed across the sky. I didn't need to see it. I could choreograph the entire pathetic scene in my head. The doorman, a man I paid a handsome Christmas bonus to every year, would greet Leo with professional indifference, though a flicker of recognition might cross his face. He would announce him not as a guest, but as a delivery, a package for Mrs. Vance. Leo would ride the private elevator, the one that normally requires my keycard, his ears popping as he ascended to a world he could only glimpse through a keyhole. He would stand at my front door, the absurdly expensive slab of polished mahogany, clutching a small velvet box that contained more value than his entire net worth. And then she would open it. Amelia, my wife. She would look at him, her lover, standing there as my errand boy. Her expression would be a carefully constructed mask of neutrality. But I know her. I know the subtle tightening around her eyes, the slight press of her lips. She wouldn't rage. She wouldn't cry. She would understand immediately. This wasn't a gift. It was a message. And he was the cursed messenger. I imagined his stammered, pre-rehearsed line. "Mr. Vance hopes you like it. He can't wait to celebrate with you." And Amelia, taking the box with a steady hand, her eyes never leaving his, delivering the final, crushing blow with a simple, polite, "Thank you. You can go now." An hour later, the reality was even more satisfying. Leo returned to my office, not walking but shuffling, as if the gravity in the room had suddenly doubled. The swagger he'd tried to rebuild over the past few days was gone, replaced by the hollowed-out look of a man who has stared into the abyss and seen his own insignificance staring back. He placed my now empty travel mug on the corner of my desk. He didn't speak. I let him stand there for a full minute. "Was the delivery successful, Leo?" I asked, my voice flat, devoid of triumph. He flinched. "Yes, sir." His voice was a rasp. "And?" He swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. She said thank you." "Good. You can file the afternoon's market reports. Then you're done for the day." He all but ran from the room. I was alone again. The silence that followed was different. It was heavy with anticipation. I waited for my phone to ring. I waited for the furious text message, the email that would tear into my cruelty. Nothing. I checked my personal email. Nothing. The hours ticked by. 6 p.m. 7 p.m. The city outside my window became a glittering tapestry of lights, but my penthouse remained a black hole of communication. Her silence was a far more sophisticated countermove than I had anticipated. An outburst would have been a victory, a confirmation that I'd struck a nerve. Silence was a question mark. It was consideration. It was strategy. Her warning echoed in my mind. Sometimes when you try to break something, you only show everyone how fragile you are. Was this it? Had I miscalculated? Pushed a button that, instead of detonating, had simply been disconnected? For the first time, a sliver of uncertainty, cold and sharp, pierced my armor. Then, at 8:14 p.m., an email chimed. It wasn't from Amelia. The sender was Markham, my head of security. The subject line was succinct. Asset secured. Attached was a single video file. I clicked play. The feed was from a new, high-definition camera, one I'd had installed in the private residential hallway that morning, citing a security upgrade. The angle was perfect. It captured the elevator doors, the short stretch of hallway, and my front door. I watched Leo step out of the elevator, a study in pathetic misery. I watched him approach my home. I watched Amelia open the door. The video had no audio, which made it even more powerful. It was a silent film of his complete and utter emasculation. I saw her take the box. I saw her cool, dismissive nod. I saw him turn and practically flee back to the elevator. I watched her close the door, leaving him behind. I dragged the file into a secure, encrypted folder on my server. This was the real gift. The velvet box was just the delivery mechanism. Inside that box wasn't jewelry. It was the deed. The deed to the Soho gallery space she had lost 20 years ago. I had bought it last week through a shell corporation. It was a statement of overwhelming power. I can give you back the dream you lost. The dream you had before me. The dream you think he represents. I can buy it and hand it to you as a trinket. But the deed was for her. The ton of video was for me. It was leverage. It was proof. It was a quantifiable asset in a negotiation that had not yet begun. Amelia's silence wasn't a sign of her victory. It was the calm before she realized the true nature of the game we were playing. She thought this was about her heart. I was playing for the whole company. I leaned back, the leather of my chair groaning in protest. I pulled up the reservation for per se. Friday, 8 o'clock. A table for two. I looked at the video file again, its thumbnail a perfect, frozen tableau of betrayal and humiliation. The anniversary dinner wouldn't be a celebration. It wouldn't even be a confrontation. It would be a closing. And I had just secured my controlling interest. The table at per se was my throne room. 3 Michelin stars, a panoramic view of the park, and a wine list that could buy a small country. I arrived early, savoring the anticipation. I had choreographed this evening down to the minute. The sommelier would recommend the 96 Lafite. The amuse-bouche would arrive. And then I would begin the slow, methodical dissection of my wife's future. Amelia arrived at 8 o'clock precisely. She wasn't wearing the dress I'd had sent over. Instead, she wore a simple, severe black sheath that I'd never seen before. It was the kind of dress a woman wears to a funeral, or to sign a death warrant. There was no apology in her eyes, no fear. There was only a calm, unnerving clarity. "Julian," she said, her voice even as she sat, "this is a lovely table. Only the best for our anniversary," I replied, gesturing for the waiter. The wine was poured. I let the silence hang for a moment before making my opening move. "I trust my assistant made the delivery without issue?" She took a slow sip of water. "He was very efficient. You've trained him well." She met my gaze over the rim of her glass. "The gallery deed. It was quite a statement." I thought it was fitting, I said, leaning back, the leather cool against my suit. A reminder of the dream we started with. A reminder of what I can give you. What I can always give you. Yes, she said softly. A reminder. She placed her glass down with a quiet click. I sold it this morning. The air in my lungs turned to ice. My perfectly orchestrated scene shattered. You what? I sold it, she repeated, her voice betraying no emotion. A holding company made me an offer I couldn't refuse. It seems nostalgia is a valuable commodity. The funds cleared an hour ago. Thank you, Julian. It was the seed capital I needed. My mind raced, trying to process the data, to find the angle. This wasn't in the playbook. Seed capital for what? Another charity project? A book club? The words were laced with venom. A desperate attempt to regain control. A faint smile touched her lips, but it didn't reach her eyes. No. I'm starting a fund. The sommelier approached with the Lafitte. Oblivious. I waved him away without looking. A fund. The words hung in the air between us, an absurdity. You're what? Amelia, you don't know the first thing about private equity. I know more than you think, she said, her calm unwavering. For 20 years, I've been your silent partner. I sat at the dinners, I read the prospectuses you left on the nightstand. I listened to you rehearse your takedowns on the phone. I had the best teacher in New York. I learned everything about how you build an empire. And I learned everything about your weaknesses. I felt a tremor of pure, cold fury. And what about your little analyst? Your ghost of me past? Is he part of this brilliant new venture? I spat the words, wanting to see her flinch, to see some crack in this new armor. She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something that looked like pity. Leo? Julian, please. He was a test, a proof of concept. A proof of what? I demanded, my voice low and dangerous. That I could still inspire loyalty, that I could identify hunger and use it. He was a cheap stock I acquired to see if my strategy worked. It did. He served his purpose. But you were right about him. He's a knockoff. And I've learned to only invest in the genuine article. She reached into her purse and slid a single sheet of paper across the table. It was a letter of resignation. Not hers. It was from Marcus Thorne, my head of emerging markets. My protégé. The son of my original partner. Effective immediately. Marcus has a better offer, Amelia said quietly. He's my first acquisition. His specialty, as you know, is identifying undervalued assets. Companies you consider too sentimental, too small. Companies like dusty art galleries in Soho. I stared at the letter. My meticulously constructed world was tilting on its axis. The video on my server, my trump card, was suddenly a pathetic monument to my own blindness. I hadn't been watching a hostile takeover of my marriage. I'd been funding and ignoring a hostile takeover of my life. She hadn't been cheating on me with a junior analyst. She had been headhunting my best talent. This was never about him, she said, rising from her chair. This was about me. You built a fortress, Julian, and you were so proud of the walls you never realized you taught the prisoner how to build siege weapons. She didn't wait for a reply. She turned and walked away, leaving me alone at a table for two, with an uneaten meal and a view of. I sat there for 10 minutes, maybe 20. The waiter cleared her untouched plate. The sommelier avoided my gaze. The 96 Lafitte tasted like vinegar in my mouth. My empire hadn't just been breached. Its foundations had been ripped out from under me by the one person I thought was a permanent fixture. I paid the bill in cash and walked out, leaving a tip large enough to be an insult. The ride back to the penthouse was a descent into a silent hell. The city lights weren't trophies anymore. They were a billion glittering eyes, all watching me fail. The driver didn't speak. The silence was absolute. When the elevator opened onto my private floor, I saw him, Leo. He was standing by the service entrance, looking like a ghost haunting the scene of his own demise. He'd clearly been waiting, summoned by some desperate need for a conclusion. He saw me and straightened up, his face a mask of terror, expecting the final, annihilating blow. This was it. The release valve for the white-hot rage building in my chest. I could ruin him, blacklist him from Wall Street with a single phone call. I could make sure he never worked in this city again. I walked towards him, the words forming on my tongue, the perfect, brutal speech of termination. I opened my mouth to utterly obliterate the last vestige of his existence in my world, but the words caught in my throat. I looked at his terrified face, the cheap suit, the raw, pathetic ambition that Amelia had so expertly weaponized and discarded. Destroying him wouldn't hurt her. It wouldn't get Marcus back. It would just be noise, a predictable tantrum. It was the move she expected me to make. She had beaten me at my own game. The only way to win now was to refuse to play. I stopped in front of him. He flinched, bracing for impact. "Go home, Leo," I said, my voice eerily calm. He stared, confused. "Sir? Your employment is terminated. Effective now. Pack your things and get out." I looked past him, as if he were already fading from view. "I don't care where you go, but I never want to see your face in this city again." It wasn't an order. It was a dismissal of his entire existence. He wasn't a rival to be crushed. He was a bad investment to be written off. A rounding error. As he scurried away, I felt a strange, cold clarity. She had taken my players. She thought she knew my playbook, but I wasn't going to play the old game. Okay, I have to ask you all, is this the ultimate power move, or am I just stooping to their level? Let me know in the comments if you think this revenge is justified, or if I've taken it way too far.